Yeah.
So first of all, thank you so much for joining today, and I would really like to thank everyone, um, Ramon, Jin, Ella, and Marco, and Vanessa for taking the time in such a short notice. And just to kind of explain again, this is we do within the Stanford Lead community um, this initiative related to innovation finance section, and we have a dialogue on by sort of like a bi-weekly basis. What is the movement that we have and what kind of application that we can apply in different parts of the world. So today we would like to um, choose the topic related to digital asset exchange. And first of all, I would like to, if it's okay, just briefly go over what they had at the blockchain survey that was done by Deloitte this year. And then it will be like 5 minutes, followed by the speaker session from Ramon and the team. Okay, and if you have any questions, please feel free to interrupt. And shall we start then?
Hi. Yes. Thanks. Anyway, I think Nishioka-san, you have had a short term here in terms of a elevator pitch on actually what we're doing, right? My
Yeah.
background is definitely from the technical side, having graduated from engineering and so forth, and being very early on in the computer world. That being said, I became the youngest member of the exchange. I've gone through the whole process of helping the exchange computerize here in the Philippines and their capital markets from
Mhm.
open outcry. I've been on their board, again, elected as the youngest governor by the age of 27. And that's
Wow.
given me the experience as well as the exposure to deal with exchanges around the world. And what's happened over, I guess, 100 years of regulation
Mhm.
is we've become isolated islands, which basically technology doesn't recognize. And with that, the demand for raising capital across the globe, especially in developing nations, is tremendous, right? And we cannot be hedged in. Why must everybody list in New York? Why must everybody trade nickel, perhaps, even on the London Metals Exchange, considering between Russia, Indonesia, and the Philippines, we basically are the OPEC of nickel. So
Mhm.
the whole idea, though, is it's not about technology. It's about being able to protect and defend yourself in the World Trade Organization and saying that this is a strategic focus for a sovereign nation like the Philippines to be able to use its talent as well as its laws to leapfrog, considering that technology at this moment is still initiated in the language of English, which we're the third largest English-speaking country in the world. So what our legislators have done, including I guess, a more enlightened president in terms of growing where the Philippines can competitively compete, said we are going to give you a leg up by ensuring that should anybody question the legality of what you're doing, the strong Republic of the Philippines will back it. So the area that we are is, number one, covered within our constitution and therefore must be respected in court. Intellectual property is strong and directly oversight with the office of the president. And that's a very rare situation around the globe today, where most of them are really grants that may or may not be revoked, as you can see what's happening recently in Korea. So with that, I'd like to turn over to Jin and my partners. And it's very rare that by constitution, a government grants you your own commodities exchange, your own stock exchange, your own digital asset currency exchange, your own REIT, your own currency exchange, and your own commodities exchange, and taking down the global barriers of regulation. Because should they question us, basically what they'll have to question is the sovereignty of the Philippines globally to entertain this. And that would be a difficult, considering that the Philippines is actually quite unusually geopolitically important to Japan, China, the United States, Europe, even Australia at this point, to point out the furthest country in the southern hemisphere. Jim?
Thank you.
Um, Nishioka-san, if you can give
Yeah,
Jin the ability to share, it would be good also.
sure, sure, sure. Not a problem. Hold on a minute.
Jin, you're on mute, buddy.
Yeah, you're mute.
Okay. Yeah, someone mentioned a while ago, my background is in banking and capital markets. So I was leading Union Bank's initiatives for the past 4.5 years, specifically in blockchain and distributed ledger technology. The objective there was to set up a new bank that would disrupt the existing using technology, blockchain being the main technology that we would apply. In the implementation of different projects, which included stablecoin, custody on the chain, um, bonds on the chain, domestic remittance, and cross-border remittance using blockchain technology, along with other implementations. The biggest problem we had by far, was not the technology, because it was readily available. And in fact, it was even better at exercising governance by design than the existing compliance teams that we had. It was really a question of getting the regulator to understand the technology and accept it, and find a way to regulate a technology that already had self-governance embedded within it. That's where the partnership and the collaboration with the AFAB along with Ramon came into play. What we saw was, if regulation was the largest hindrance to progress, then regulation would also be a catalyst for progress in the same respect. So in 2019, what happened was there was a Republic Act 11453 that was enacted. In a nutshell, it allows for the issuance, exchange, and custody of digital assets. The implementing rules and regulations was passed thereafter by AFAB, which indicated priority areas: anything from artificial intelligence, blockchain, business process outsourcing, cloud computing, cybersec, establishing an offshore exchange, defense technology. So in reality, what this did is it allowed for us to issue assets in these priority areas on a fast track basis. Now, once the implementing rules and regulations were set, it needed a entity to execute this on a commercial level. So that was granted to iWave Advanced Research Group on an 8-year exclusive license and a perpetual license thereafter. The launch of the exchange was officially on August 8th of this year. So we're fairly a new exchange, but upon launching the exchange, we clocked in at around 2.9 billion in mandates for the exchange, which we are still in process or processing at the moment. Now, the mandate is very specific if you look at it. And when I say specific, it goes down to enumerating each type of technology and indicating how we can implement that particular technology. And it's expansive in that it includes pretty much everything tech related, from the mundane to the more progressive, right? So commodities, currencies, funding protocols, interest-bearing coins, investment trusts, investment vehicles, smart bonds, stable coins, staking mechanisms, tokenization of assets. So we can do NFTs, participation tokens, membership tokens. We can set up a DAO. We can do automated market making. We can set up either a centralized or decentralized exchange. We do have the decentralized exchange. We're developing the decentralized exchange right now. We can do derivatives and prediction markets, exchange aggregation, margin trading, options trading, name it, it's in the mandate. At least insofar as an exchange is concerned. And we can implement all of these technologies to enhance and grow businesses that intend to list in the exchange, focused on these particular areas. One of the things or reasons why we were granted such an expansive license was it wasn't seen as just like authorizing a business to function. The business is seen as a catalyst for economic progress and economic change for an entire province. So this is at the center of the Philippines. This is Metro Manila. It's a mega city of around 25 million people. It's the largest city in the country, made up of another 9 sub-cities, and it takes up around 53% of the country's GDP. Now, 70% of the country's export comes from this area here, Calabarzon, which requires a travel time of around 4 to 6 hours to get to the port. And then from the port, it requires to move out another 6 hours to go to the Belt and Road. Now, Bataan, which is the province right beside Metro Manila, as you can see, it's empty. So you have the most congested city and the least congested city right beside each other. Bataan is twice the size of Metro Manila, but has around 95% less people than Metro Manila. So obviously the progress is going to be in Bataan. There's a bridge that's being built. This is a $5 billion bridge that's being built. It's the longest bridge in the Philippines. It's going to be complete in the next 5 to 6 years. That's going to cut down travel time from around 4 hours to around 35 minutes. And it's going to pretty much put Bataan at the center. So Bataan needs business to come in and they need progress to come in. But one of the things that they do offer is tax incentives for businesses to come in. However, they don't have access to capital, nor do they have access to credit. So what they did was, what we did was we approached them and we said, look, our skill is in capital markets. We can bring in the investment, but we need you to be able to support us with the proper laws in place. So that's why they granted us the exclusive license to operate the exchange. Now, what's the objective here? With the law in place, our objective is to facilitate the migration of tokenized value, where we, given the structure that we are allowed to implement, can facilitate the transfer of value for commodities, gold, physical money, securities, real estate, and derivatives, where we can give incentives to issuers in order to attract them to issue in our exchange here at GTX. So what is it that we offer? Well, normally if you launch an exchange, you have access to capital. But through our exchange, should you issue, you also have access to credit. So if you issue your asset, you can borrow against the asset. You also have access to around 20 to 30% of spot liquidity. In the crypto space, we have around 500 assets that you can trade on. We have fiat channels in around 12 countries or 12 currencies that can be traded on. And we're expanding our network of broker dealers to around 200. To complement that, AFAB is giving tax incentives. So if you list your exchange, list your business to raise a certain amount of funds, you can cut your cost or your tax in that respect to near zero. So it's zero for the first 5 years and around 2 to 5% for the next 10 years thereafter. And then after that, after around 17 years, tax normalizes. You also receive regulatory cover. So what that means is, let's say you're in your own country, you need to seek regulatory approval, but it's going to take time. What AFAB can do is they can provide you interim regulatory approval for you to operate in a tax-free environment. And then when you receive regulatory approval from your local jurisdiction, then that takes over. Okay. We only have 3 restrictions, just to be clear. First is we can't list any Philippine company. Second is we cannot sell to any Filipino or any Filipino entity. And the third is we cannot deal in any Philippine currency, because if we do any of these 3 activities, we fall under the jurisdiction of the central bank and the SEC. However, in lack of this, we fall under the jurisdiction of AFAB, which falls directly on, as someone said, under the office of the president. So how does the exchange work? In simple terms, it functions just like a world book, right? Where we accredit custodians in each jurisdiction to hold on to the asset or attest to the asset and provide audit to the asset. And via API, we connect the various exchanges, connecting individuals from country A or exchange A to a country B or exchange B. So if you have an asset that is held by an accredited custodian and issued in the exchange, a person from country B can purchase an asset that is being held in country A. Now, the process is quite simple. We've done this in order to expedite the migration of value For utility tokens, you issued from the introduction to issuing, to providing the deck, to submission of the documents, all the way until token setup and listing. This can be as quick as around 4 weeks and as long as around 3 months. But if we need to expedite it, this can be done in around 2 weeks time. For security tokens, it's around about the same. The only difference for security tokens is you have to set up a special purpose vehicle to own the asset and then issue in the exchange under the structure that we recommend. So what's that structure? Well, pretty simple. Let's say you have an issuing company that intends to issue the shares. We create an SPV under a joint venture with our investment holding company. So you can choose your country. Our preference is out of Singapore. And the SPV assigns the rights to the asset to a trust, who under a token issuing contract has the beneficiary as the token issuing company that receives the token, that is the issuing company that receives the tokens through a token issuing company. So once the tokens are received, or the tokenized shares are received by the issuing company, it's then surrendered to the exchange, which then sells it to the users. Now, what's unique with the users is that these users have 3 capabilities. So once they purchase the asset, they can of course buy and sell the asset. They can lock in the asset and earn yield on it, or they can borrow against it. So I buy $1 million worth of the asset and I can borrow up to 90% of its value. So my exposure is only 10%. We have 3 parts to any sale. We have a private sale, we have a free sale, and we have a public sale, which is done prior to listing in the exchange. This normally takes anywhere from around 3 weeks to around 3 months. So that's our basic process for GTX. Right. Now, this is a view of our exchange. So as you can see, there's fiat onboarding, offboarding channels. There's futures, there's margin trading, there's lending, there's staking, there's the IEO segment, and you can become a broker dealer and you can issue in GTX. Pretty straightforward in terms of the process that's in place. To list in the exchange is broken down into 3 simple steps. So you just sign the NDA, submit the documents that we send to you, which comes in just 1 form. Once you finish the checklist, we approve you or we disapprove the launch. It takes another week to be able to set it up in the exchange, and we can launch it thereafter. It's quite quick. Everything is summarized in 2 forms. So we just have a starter kit, which is for an IEO and an STO. Very simple. It's around 4 pages long, and it enumerates in 4 steps. There are around 5 steps for an IEO issuance to an STO issuance. That's it. Any questions?
Thank you, Jin. That's great. I have actually one question regarding when you started launching this initiative, and you mentioned about how you went through the AFAB as opposed to the central bank's regulation. Can you kind of walk me through how you found the way through, and also what do you see sort of the difference between the central bank's regulation, which is quite, I assume is this is really phenomenon that you have done, and yeah.
Oh yeah, I can share an experience there. So I'll give you one example, like a Philippine stablecoin. So PHX token is the first bank-backed stablecoin that was approved by the central bank in the planet. People think it's USDT or something like that, but no, that's not a true bona fide central bank backed stablecoin. PHX token was the first one that really was approved, and the difficulty in proposing a new technology for the issuance of a currency is that the regulator doesn't know how to regulate, nor do they understand what that technology is. So in some ways, we have to go to them, or at least at that time, we had to teach them how to regulate us. So, but we didn't we couldn't make it seem like we were teaching them how to do that, because they're supposed to understand what the technology is all about, right? Which is kind of okay. So how do you make it? How do you execute it in that way, right? So what I did in Union Bank was we brought in experts from Switzerland, KPMG, and Crypto Valley and all of that, in order to explain to the regulator how they should regulate us. But in reality, what we were doing was we were feeding those policies to the consultants that we brought in, right? Picking up from best practices that we learned, because even KPMG and the other companies were not clearly aware of how to be able to regulate, right? So we had to formulate the right ways to make it happen, picking up from what we knew on how we would be regulated by the SEC and by the central bank. So learning from that, it still comes from the private entity. It comes from the entities that know most about the technology, that would then teach the regulator, and then the regulator would formulate a way in partnership with external groups who we would be in collaboration with, right?
Yeah.
So that's what AFAB turned out to be. Ramon, in his relationship with AFAB, realized that they were willing to listen to us. And Ramon, in many ways, had discussions with them on the technology, assisting them in how to draft it. The only difference there was AFAB had to expedite it due to the current situation that we had brought about in some ways, directly or indirectly, by the pandemic, right? So that's also why we got, I guess, to some extent, the mandate approved, because there was an urgent need to be able to make things happen for Bataan. Right? Now, of course, in the next coming months, we hope to be able to make it a success for Bataan, the entire region. And we anticipate that the other provinces or the other zones will slowly or quickly start to learn from this and adopt quickly, right? But it always requires somebody to be able to provide the proper influence to these zones. And it turns out it's not just Bataan that needs this. That's why we set up Oz, because given that there's 5,400 eco zones throughout the world, these eco zones provide the same benefits to all. Fast government processing, tax incentives, and regulatory cover. Simple, right? But they don't have access to capital and access to credit, and they need partners to be able to make this happen. So we had to set up a separate brand, which is called Oz, as I mentioned to you, to serve that need and to connect AFAB and its capabilities under a G2G arrangement to other ecozones. And that's what we see or envision as the next step for GTX and Oz. So I guess I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it's very clear, and I do understand that with your really advanced initiative that is leading the whole ecosystem in the Philippines, that you had received approval from the AFAB, which is and currently that it is open to the non-Philippine companies. And I guess my understanding is that moving forward, that this will be kind of spread to other eco zones, as well as that if the regulation develops, that it will be, I guess it is assumed that it will be open to the Philippine company as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. Yeah.
Thank you. So, one of the things that we go ahead, Ramon.
Yeah, I think,
Ramon.
like I said, in many ways, the ways we go public today have a very regimented style, and unfortunately, even as I say, some of the firms want to escape it, you cannot rectify the legislation that has already been ingrained there. So obviously, despite the innovation that you may have out of Silicon Valley, out of Austin, the regulators are hemmed in by an accumulation of these walled gardens. And again, there will be a disruption. When you look at it with what Elon Musk is doing as well, you do know that the connectivity between London and New York is all about latency. And when you do that and you tie up with people like Starlink and SpaceX, for example, you're going to cut
Uh-huh.
that in half. So these, there, you're really going against an era of accumulated cost of regulation, cost of
Mhm.
compliance, and legacy cost of actual physical infrastructure, which in reality, you really have to disrupt yourself to be able to go into the next thing. And the demand for capital as we get out of the pandemic is even going to be greater. So we're seeing companies that the principals have actually listed on NASDAQ a number of times.
Mhm.
You're seeing EV companies now considering listing here and using those proceeds to build a factory domestically within the ASEAN region. And, it's a different source of income directly within the region they're attracting. So it's a very unique thing where basically you will build liquidity by both desire and when you do have enough, I guess, unicorns as they start coming out, right? And the storyline, it's going to be
Mm.
quite interesting. So we have initiatives together, for example, with the Sydney Stock Exchange, which is tied up with Frankfurt. We have initiatives with the Malaysian Stock Exchange, which will recognize us. And then again, these are, I think, the ways that we will escape the legacy costs, and we'll be operating very efficiently versus the rest from a market perspective.
Interesting. Thank you. I guess with that comment, I also suspect that moving forward that this Philippine will be, I guess, using this GTX will possibly be have some treasury kind of related function for ASEAN regions for some of the the global companies that may see. Uh, yeah, and I think in terms of treasury functions, we have like Singapore and Hong Kong and other countries, but I think that this initiative will, I think, move forward with um, from the advancement of this GTX. I think, yeah,
I agree with you. And like I
yeah.
said, unfortunately, considering this is so new, governments normally don't know what to do with it. And therefore, they can grant you based on
Mhm.
a privilege, and a grant is really a privilege, it's not a right. What we've done is we've ensured it's a right. And therefore, you can have protection. And ultimately, as you do this, that's what you need, right?
Mm, yeah, exactly.
So
Now,
we had an ex top guy from Goldman Sachs listen to us, and he basically said, "Oh my God, what you've built is a regulator of regulators where people can come to you." That's an interesting thing. So, I was very comforted in the fact that someone from Goldman Sachs at that high level would understand what we're doing and actually agrees with it. So, it's an interesting time for us.
yes, definitely.
Yeah, it's something new actually. We are one of the first to do that in the industry.
I mean, if I look at India with its various states, and we consider ourselves a global company. Don't look at us as a Philippine company. We're just using the Philippines to enable the law. Imagine all of
Mm,
these startups in India or Indonesia that would like to have a wider access. And it's not that you do not have an upper echelon of 5 to 10% that can complete an AMC or KYC in other countries, right? Whether it's Nigeria, Indonesia,
mm,
that do have the resources, but try to get them to buy an Apple stock. So remember, it's not only about issuance of new companies, but if we're able to tokenize it in a structured way, it will make it easier for those who perhaps my daughter uses an iPad son is an iPhone, buys the latest one. I'm using the MacBook Pro. But none of us really, unless you're with investment bankers and so forth, it's still a complicated way to buy into something like Amazon or Tesla and so forth and so on. And we will be able to make that accessible throughout the world. So can you imagine when you have an arbitrage possibility like that, what the real market cap will be for a company like what do you call this, Tesla or Apple?
Yeah.
Interesting. Yep. It will open up their market as well. Now the Central Asian, South Asian economy or that build will be open to this opportunity.
Yeah, we'd love to have. Here's the best part about it. What do you call this, Manas? We're opening it up. It's not something that is controlled by us. We'd like to work with other IT companies to make it the most robust platform. And, you know, somehow by having buy-in from other tech companies working with us and, you know, open coding it and so forth, we will have that robustness built in. And that really, truly is what I call the democratization of finance.
Right.
I mean, I see Juan Manuel is from Ford, you know, maybe a team from Ford would come in, spin out and say, hey, we'd like to be able to raise funds outside of the.
Hi, Manuel.
Hey, Session, how are you?
Good, good. Mhm.
I joined a little bit late, but just listening to you guys. It sounds a really interesting approach.
Definitely, definitely.
I know the team would be glad to answer it. I hope it's the value proposition is there. And again, like I said, tech can run rampant, but unfortunately, when it gets to a court of law internationally, you really have to have a base. So we intend to address both sides. But please, if there's any questions, we're here to answer them.
Thank you. Any questions around?
Just about the presentation, if you would be able to share, as I say, I joined late just to, I'd like to take a look.
Yeah, that
complete.
will help to go through that. This is such a new concept that would be great to understand that.
You know, we'll post all of the links. Some of these are actually out in the open already because we've already launched. And they are available as well on YouTube. And should you need any more minute details, information, whether you're coming from a broker dealer side, a tech side, or an issuer side, we'll send it to you. Don't worry about it.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Thanks.
Sounds good.
So, Jim, Ella,
Yes,
can
go
you
ahead.
post some of those links here for people to copy? And then I will circulate your LinkedIn to the group and we can go from there.
Okay.
Great. Can I ask you one question? Just to understand about what type of, let's say, company or specific kind of industry that you're looking for GTX to be listed. Do you have any thoughts around, or do you?
We don't have any preference because at the end of the day, what we want to do is move to a full disclosure environment. There are some best, whether it's New York, where you have a specialist who's watching over certain issues, or you have sponsors coming from London or Singapore Catalyst. So there are still some best practices we've taken into consideration in an amalgamation of what works and doesn't work. What we've done is just lower the cost of entry. So you will have financial advisors, you will have sponsors, but in terms of custodian, the new technologies take care of that. In terms of transferring of the tokenization, we've made it easier. And you know, these used to be trust entities, but in reality, handled by, I guess, known trust entities. But with the technology today, that trust can be migrated to the technologies that we have from a community standpoint.
Okay, Thanks for that.
Does that make sense, Nishioka-san? Because really,
Yes.
our industry hasn't changed in over half a century, right? That you've had speed increases and so forth and so on, but in
Yeah.
reality, coming from a clean sheet and allowing technology to take care of what trust entities used to do as intermediaries, adding friction costs. I mean, you just calculate all the friction costs really for a high net worth individuals from participate in what really should be a democratization, and the cost is high, and that's what we're addressing.
Okay. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Definitely. Yeah. And I guess the what I found is that the regulatory and the law that is under, I think is very favorable as well. Like here in Japan, uh, we do have like the cryptocurrencies here in Japan. However, it is when there is like a hacking, it affects every players, and it is like 0 or 1. And I think there's a lot of still challenge need to be overcome in Japan as well. So I think with the regulation that is under that on the AFB, I think we'll make it stable. I think so. I guess that's really the um, a great part about this initiative. Yeah. Thank you.
Guys, I'd like to thank all of you very much for taking some time out of your day, especially it's a weekday and workday there, to listening. And
Yeah.
again, we remain at your beck and call to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Muchas
you.
gracias, Juan
Thank
Manuel.
you.
Thank you.
Right.
Thanks,
Thank
Jim.
you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
See you guys. Have a
See
good
you.
night.
Bye bye. Good night.
Thanks, Jim. It was very productive, Sachiv.
Yeah, it is. It is very fascinating, and
And the
there's a lot to
concept is
learn.
so new. It
Eh,
is very fascinating.
I think so, and definitely the how he is, this GTX is really going ahead the regulation. Is really fascinating to see.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think this is really the power of this lead network. We have just so many intelligent, like-minded people within our
Correct.
group. So I really want to thank
So I was
everyone.
thinking, Sachiv, let's how about investing some more sessions to this blockchain, crypto, digital assets
Yeah.
that would help
Mhm.
understand our and improve our understanding. We can start investing in them, and
Mhm.
then we can think of maybe we can collaborate to write a couple of papers on that.
Mhm. Yes. So yeah. So meaning that to look at this, I think in terms of innovation and finance, because of the financing nature, I do think that this digital asset is one of the key aspects of our group, which
Yeah.
means that this understanding about the technology, how the process goes, and even of course you can invest yourself. That would definitely better understand the process, um, and I think the greatest benefit is to learn how to apply in different different countries or different areas. So
Yes.
I think that's the really the ballpark of this initiative.
Yeah. Let's understand that more about this crypto, new technology, digital assets.
Yes.
NFT, DeFi. There are so many things
And it
that
is,
is a relatively low hanging fruit, which a lot of things are going on.
yeah,
But this coins, cable, stable coin, crypto, this is something digital assets, fungible things, NFT. These are something very new.
yeah, it is definitely new.
Yeah,
And I mean, some of them could be, purely speculative thing, but some of them is really has intrinsic value, which is
yeah,
really the benefit of this having a fraction or share of any type of asset. I think that is really the benefit of this the technology of blockchain. So um, it is, um, I think there's still a lot to that we can learn from and
yeah,
apply, not purely from the investment perspective, but also from the usage
yeah.
perspective.
The usage of that and how this is going to impact various industries, uh,
Yes,
the future of finance and investment,
exactly. So like
the way we do transactions currently.
yes, and this will, like, for example, if what was shared in today's presentation is this for example, city of Bataan. Of course, when city of Bataan would like to create a smart city, of course there's the financing needs, but getting a finance, from the bank itself could be challenging sometimes, especially with this COVID situation. So a benefit will be is that for the retail, investors can also invest in a small amount,
Yeah,
and that actually is the benefit of the decentralized finance. That's
correct.
really the benefit, and I guess it'll be a threat to the banks as well. But also, I think it helps banks too, with the retail investors in, and not only the financing part, but also I think moving forward is the information and the data that can be monetized as well.
Yep,
So that's the very interesting part, how the finance and the data and on all of these are combined together to fully utilize the information to be value added.
yep,
So really exciting. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess looking forward, who yeah, it'll be great to think of what will be the next topic for the event in 2 weeks time.
yeah. Let's check.
Yeah, great.
Yeah,
Well,
thanks,
thank you.
thanks,
Thank you, Manas.
thanks, Achiu.
All right. Have a
Yep,
good day.
yeah. You too have a good night.
Bye.
Yeah, bye bye.